Good morning, everybody. Welcome to East Tennessee Pinball. I'm going to talk about this Flash Gordon. Been giving me a little headache lately. Let me tell you the story about this thing. So I got this thing all fixed up and fired up about a month ago. When I first got this game, had a problem with the saucer. It wouldn't kick out. Like, it only kicked out maybe 9 out of 10 times. So what do you figure the problem is? Think. Probably a dirty switch. That's what I thought too. And probably it was a dirty switch. So I cleaned the switch and it did get better. You know, it would work. Well, it didn't mess up for maybe a week. So I don't know what the odds were. Maybe 1 in 100 it was messing up. About a week later, it did it again, or it started doing it a little bit more. And I was like, so I cleaned the switch again. The other thing I did was I replaced all those. I repinned that connector because this is on the MPU. This is the send and receive wires for all the switches on the playfield. And I played a whole bunch of games. I could not get it to have that error again, and it was fine until this 2 days ago, Tuesday night. This was scheduled to be played at the tournament, and somebody was playing it before the tournament. They're like, "Hey, Diner, this ball's stuck in the saucer." I'm like, "Holy crap!" So anyway, it raised its head again. So yesterday I spent all day chasing this thing down. So, another thing I should say: when the ball was in there, if you were to just give it a little bang or jostle the game, it would kick out, which again makes you think, well, it's probably a dirty switch. So yesterday, first thing I did was I took that switch out. I put some new, soldered on some new points onto the switch, and I thought that was it. You know, I played 4 or 5 games, and then it messed up. I was like, holy crap, it's doing it again. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do here? Okay, so next thing I tried was I hooked this up. So this is a switch tester. Each one of these little, it's hard to see here. Let me get it focused in. It's upside down. Each of these little things here is actually a button. So that's like switch 29. So this thing plugs in to the MPU right there. So you disconnect the playfield, plug this thing in, and you can press all the buttons on the playfield, and it's just like running over and pressing a button on the game. So the difficulty of doing all this was it was real hard to get this thing to mess up. So you'd have to, and the only way to reliably get it to mess up, not reliably, even unreliably, the only way to get it to mess up was to play a game or 2 or 3 games or 3 or 4 games. So you have to play for like maybe 15 minutes to get the ball stuck in there. Once you get the ball stuck in there, carefully, so you don't jostle the game, plug this in there and press all the switches. Find the switches that relate to this, and guess what? You still had the same error. So the playfield's disconnected, so you think, okay, it must be a problem on the MPU board. These switches, the first thing they go through is, well, they have a couple diodes, check the diodes, they go through this 6820 here. I swapped that 6820, I verified continuity on there. Everything looked good. Couldn't get it to mess up. Next thing I did, I got these were replaced. So this happens to be a Weebly. Most of y'all are probably more familiar with Alltech. Basically the same thing. Probably. In any case, put this thing in there, and play another 30 minutes just to get it to mess up, and it messed up again. It's like, holy crap. So it's definitely a playfield issue. And remember, the funny thing about this is when it's in there, if you gave it a little rap, it would immediately kick the ball out. So but the fact that when you plug this in there, you had the same performance when you disconnected the playfield. Those 2 things don't jive up. I'm going to explain this here in a second, but it didn't make sense to me at the time. So anyway, after swapping out the other MPU anyway, to a brand new MPU, I was confident that it wasn't an MPU problem. So another clue that I had was when a ball would get stuck in there, I checked every other switch on the playfield, and this left in lane wasn't working, and this center target wasn't working. So I'm gonna go over here and look at this, show you the switch matrix. So that saucer, that middle drop target, and the left feeder lane, so that's the left in lane, all three of those are common to the I5 row. So that's one of the receive lines on the switch matrix. So I thought, well, maybe that pin that I repinned, maybe I didn't get that pin, pinned it too far up onto the insulation. That's the easy thing to do. So the pin is not making good contact with the copper wire inside of it. I checked that. So basically I hooked my multimeter up to it's pin 13. It's this little white one right here, white one right there, white with the yellow bands. Into there, took the multimeter up to there and looked, just verified, make sure I had a good connection and the pin wasn't mangled or anything. Check continuity between there and the white wire, that same white wire here, I'm talking about under the playfield, and here, had good continuity, yanked on the wires, made sure it wasn't a loose connection, looked at the diodes, made sure they were good. Everything looked good. So I was still kind of amiss of what the problem was. During all these operations, one thing I did notice is I just barely touched the coin door one time when the ball was stuck in there and it kicked it out. I mean, I just barely touched it. That gave me a hint. So maybe it's something on the coin door. Open up the coin door. And this credit switch was completely mangled up. I've rebuilt it. You see the new diode there. But the offending part of it was, let me turn the game off so that light turns off. This piece of fish paper right here and this piece of fish paper right here basically keeps both sides of the blade are just inside of those two pieces of fish paper. It keeps that metal piece from, so this blade right there on my finger, where my finger blade is at, fingernail, not grounding out to this button, and it keeps on the inside of here is the other blade of the switch, keeps it from grounding out with this metal piece, again, on my fingernail that I'm tapping. So you got to have those, it's called fish paper, just insulates it, because you've got 5 volts going through this switch. If that 5 volt grounds out to the coin door, well, then the computer can't read it. The MPU can't see it. And that's exactly what was happening. So let me show you on the, so I showed you the switch matrix here, but this is, let me get it in focus here. This is only the switch matrix for the playfield. On the Bally's, they have a different page for the switch matrix for everything in the cabinet. If you look at this credit switch, look at that, I5. It's the same line as those other 3. Because the cabinet and the, let me back up to the MPU. The cabinet and the playfield switches are basically, they're all in parallel. So this is the schematics for the MPU. You've got your playfield return switches. That's our I5. That's the one that was the offending problem. And there are cabinet return switches. I5, that's the credit switch. So if you follow this I5, you don't have to follow it exactly. It gets grouped up here. They're run together. They're in parallel. This line here is basically just kind of a shorthand for all 5 of these. And then they run over to the U10. That's that one of the chips that I was swapping out because I was thinking maybe there was a bad portion in there, but it wasn't. So basically, when I swapped out, when I pulled this connector off to disconnect all the playfield switches and used this tester here, I left this one plugged in, and this one here goes to the cabinet. So I still had that ground on the credit switch, and it wasn't a continuous ground. It was just an intermittent ground. And that was what made it so hard to find, because you'd have to like play and just the vibration would have to be just right for that thing to ground. So even though I had this plugged in and I was thinking I had the play field disconnected, I did have the play field disconnected. I didn't have the cabinet disconnected. So when this would ground, these two, like I just showed you on the schematics, these are wired in parallel. So the I5 here is connected to the I5 here on the board. So when I had that grounding issue here, it affected the one up here. So that's why testing with this didn't work. I should have unplugged this, and I did not. So that's why I got that confusing behavior. It was only confusing because I didn't understand it. But in any case, lesson learned. So, but the good news is I've played 20 or 30 games on this since replacing that fish paper, and it's all go. So I'm really certain I've got it now, especially when I saw on the schematic that credit switch is the same row on the matrix, that I5. So that made me feel very comfortable that was actually the problem, and we got a good solution for it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Talk to y'all soon.